Hello, 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 and welcome to the Advancing Adult Compassion Resilience and Youth Serving Professional Organizations training. We're so excited to see so many people in the room today. My name is Ashley Singleton. I am one of the System of Care Summit organizers. I already see so many hearts going up in the chat and emoticons. Thank you. I'm feeling the love from the audience already. This is going to be a fun group. We're going to be together for the next 3 hours. This is meant to be interactive. It's meant to be conversational. We're here to build a community and really learn from each other and learn from the speakers. So I'm excited for so many people to be in the room. I want to just do a couple of quick notes. If you are experiencing any issues with AirMeet, the platform, you can navigate over to the wellness room, and there is an AirMeet help desk. There are folks there that can help you out, resolve any issues. I am also going to drop in the chat a Google Meet link where if you have colleagues or friends that are trying to get in, but they can't quite make it to AirMeet and they have experiencing some issues, they can go to the Google Meet link and get some help from that space as well. So, two places where you can get support and help and making sure that you're here with us in the room today. Also, we are going to talk a little bit about an accountable space. Elizabeth's going to talk a little bit about that in a minute. But if you all are noticing any folks that need some help being held accountable, there are ways that you can notify me or members of my team. So you can send me a direct message if you see across the top of the navigation bar. There is the leaderboard, moderation, feed, and people. If you click on people, you search for my name, you can send me a direct message. A lot of you have already sent direct messages, so I know that you know how to do that. You can also send a direct message to Carrie DeSell. She's another one of the System of Care Summit organizers. So either one of us, if you need to notify us of any activity that's happening that might need a closer eye, just let us know. Okay. With that, I am going to pass the mic over to my colleague and friend, Elizabeth.
Oh, thanks so much, Ashley. And thank you for calling me your friend. I'm so happy that we all at NTech are friends together. So welcome everybody to the 2023 System of Care Summit. This is the pre-summit day, but I'm welcoming you to this entire summit, Better Together, Building Systems That Care. We at the National Training and Technical Assistance Center for the Mental Health of Children, Youth, and Families, we're so glad you're here. And there are so many of you. We have had over 2,000 people register for this summit. Think about that, 2,000 people. One thing that we've learned over the past few years is that we can gather to learn, connect, celebrate, and support each other in a way that's different and maybe a little more accessible. So again, welcome. My name is Elizabeth Waitzig. I'm a managing partner at Change Matrix, and I serve as the field director for NTAC. I wanted to share with you our vision at NTAC. All children, youth, and families living with and impacted by mental health challenges have access to the resources and opportunities they need to thrive in a comprehensive and equitable system of care. That's our vision. And in order to achieve that vision, we have the following mission: to collaboratively develop and provide high quality support and innovative learning opportunities with all change agents. That's all of you, all change agents working on behalf of children, youth, and families living with or impacted by mental health challenges. We are inviting you to these 3 days in May. It's Mental Health Awareness Month, and including the 11th, which is Children's Mental Health Awareness Day, to dive into this virtual community of passionate, knowledgeable, committed people who care so deeply about the well-being of children, youth, young adults, and families in all of our communities. We are moving away from pandemic to endemic with COVID-19, knowing that there are many among us who remain vulnerable to COVID and its collective impact. Just to name a few, Negative impacts of the pandemic on young people showed worsening mental health, disruptions in key developmental milestones regarding relationships with self and others, and limited capacity for self-care. All of these highlights the critical need for early intervention support for young people due to the pandemic, and particularly those with existing mental health needs. LGBTQ youth and female youth report greater levels of poor mental health, and over a third of students said that they have recently experienced racism right before and during the COVID-19 pandemic. There is an evident increase in need among our young people and families, and those that serve them are also in need. One might say that the rate of burnout is high. In a recent resource guide, the Substance Abuse Mental Health Services Administration, or SAMHSA, defined burnout as a complex issue resulting from chronic workplace stress. It encompasses exhaustion, feeling depleted, overextended, and fatigued, depersonalization, being detached from oneself and emotionally distant from one's clients and work, feelings of inefficacy, having a reduced sense of professional accomplishment. So take a deep breath. This sounds really hard, and it is, but there's a lot of hope. There's also a lot of hope. First of all, it feels hopeful that we have more ways to connect now, that in-person meeting is becoming more available to us while we still have a virtual connection. Having all of those options feels good. Our young people, their creativity, their passion, their energy, that gives me hope and it motivates me. We are doing a better job of interrogating our systems and services to make sure that they are driven by the people most impacted, so they are more accessible, more acceptable, more appropriate, and more equitable. And we know that we're better together. Across the country, we at NTEC are supporting efforts to build systems that care, that include the health and mental health systems, justice systems, education, child welfare, faith communities, community partners, and we are intentionally focusing on peers as part of the workforce. Whether you provide individual care or lead an organization or an agency, you are a critical part of building and evolving a system of care. And because everyone who is attending this summit is vital and a gift, we wanted to offer something for you on this first day of your summit experience. Technically the pre-summit, but everybody was invited. So we're so happy all of you are here. And we want to introduce you to Compassion Resilience. Simply put, this is the ability to maintain emotional, mental, and physical well-being while compassionately supporting others through challenges. You know this work means maintaining empathy, strength, and hope in the face of hard things while acknowledging and preventing your own compassion fatigue. We have 3 amazing facilitators who are going to introduce you to a toolkit on compassion resilience. Emily Jonesberg and Brittany Fair from Rogers Behavioral Health, and Monica Caldwell of the Wisconsin Department of Public Instruction enjoy a collaborative partnership in promoting compassion resilience and positive work cultures for youth-serving organizations, schools, and caregivers in Wisconsin. The Compassion Resilience Toolkit is a workforce wellness online platform that is available at no cost, with a practical, flexible set of resources that create rich collegial conversations, support, and planning for how to address fatigue and creating a workforce that is centered on compassion and resilience, centered in compassion and resilience. This is a great example of how a long-term partnership seeded with SAMHSA Project Aware funds can create and support a workforce wellness statewide strategy across sectors. Can't wait to dive in with you. But before we do, the last thing I want to share with you before we launch into our time together is our accountable space commitment. As an attendee of this summit, we ask that you join us in committing to make this an accountable and welcoming space. In all places where we convene, we seek to create an environment that supports brave conversations conducted with the highest levels of integrity, respect, and professionalism. On this journey together, we pledge to foster a welcoming, inclusive, and equitable environment and reject a discriminatory, derogatory, oppressive, and violent language behaviors, and actions. We agree to stand firm in challenging any breaches of this commitment through direct and kind communication. We uplift behaviors and actions that support the creation of spaces that are positive and welcoming for everyone, regardless of identity or background. The only way to make lasting change is to ensure that everyone is heard, respected, and safe. Thank you so much for joining us in this commitment. So, here we go. Enjoy your time with us. Dive in. Be here to the extent that you can to join us in learning and supporting one another. Enjoy your day.
Thank you so much for that, Elizabeth. Such a warm welcome. Look at all the hearts and thumbs up. Warm welcome. Thank you, Elizabeth. I, in all of my excitement, forgot to mention some important key pieces. So, we are offering the summit with a live Spanish translation. If you are interested in experiencing this summit in Spanish, all that you need to do is navigate to the icons in this session. So they're going up and down along the side. So you see chat, there's Q&A, and at the bottom of the list, there's a puzzle piece. You click on that puzzle piece, and then you can see the options with the little headphone to hear the audio in Spanish, or you can click the icon and see the caption. And you can do both. You can hear the audio and see the caption in Spanish. For folks who need to experience the summit with live English captioning, at the bottom of the screen, the navigation bar at the bottom of the screen below our pictures, there's a camera, there's a microphone, and then you'll see a square there that has CC. That is the closed captioning button that you can use for live English closed captioning. So I wanted to make sure that everyone has the opportunity to hear and experience the summit in the way that they need. And I also see that you all are already using the Q&A function. Please use the Q&A to ask questions. If you have questions about the content, please use the Q&A for that. If you have questions about technical challenges, please let me know with a direct message, or you can go to the wellness room and visit the air meet table where there will be people there to help you with technical issues. Okay, with that, I am going to pass the mic over to Monica. Take it away.
Well, hello, y'all from Wisconsin. We are coming to you today with so much enthusiasm to share some good work. We could not have felt more welcome by NTech and the staff, and you all just putting hearts and highs from all over the US and beyond. We are honored and thrilled to be here. As you can see, as we get started here, we're here to talk about advancing adult compassion resilience. And this toolkit, which you're going to learn an awful lot about today and experience yourself so you can see what it feels like, it's available to you for free to take back to your team. So that's going to be the invitation for you to relax and let us take care of you and show you a few things. And then also to feel empowered to look at your work cultures, at wellness, at fatigue. So, just a few words about us. As your presenters, we will do a little person centered hello. And that is, my name is Monica Caldwell. As Elizabeth mentioned, I work at the Wisconsin Department of Public Instruction. I'm currently a school mental health consultant here in our state, though I join you with 37 years of experience as a social worker and a darn happy one at that. Not sure how lucky I got to have that in my world. And what I like to say is I stand with folks and children in particular with complex mental health challenges. Those folks have always been my favorite and their families. I've worked in schools, youth justice, mental health, and child welfare. So I've tried to take a prism approach to understanding the needs of children and families with complex mental health challenges, and have been so honored to hear so many stories, which of course have changed me from the inside out. Lastly, I'll say about me, I am a person with lived experience. I'm also a parent with lived experience, and so I come to you as humble as I possibly could be. And I hope that that'll be reflected in our facilitation today. Brittany, you want to say just a few words about who you are?
Absolutely. I just carry the sentiments that Monica holds with the love that we are getting. So good to see you all. I am Brittany Fair. I use she, her pronouns. I am one of the training specialists with Rogers Behavioral Health on the Community Learning and Engagement team. Honored to be a part of that team. Just a little bit background of me. I've been in the social work field for maybe 5 years, working in residential settings with those who have substance use and mental health co-occurring disorders. I've also worked in the community with helping many members just with insurance and getting whatever services they need, just to live that individual life, helping their well-being. And I'm honored to be here today, being a part of this great summit, great people, and just continuing to have the conversation around compassion resilience and how we can continue to build that with ourselves, with our teams, family, communities. So it's just good to be here. And I will let Emily kick it off.
Thank you, Brittany. It is such a pleasure to be with you all today. I'm Emily Jonesberg, she, her, hers pronouns. I'm program manager with the Community Learning and Engagement team out of Rogers Behavioral Health. So have the honor of being a coworker of Brittany and a partner with Monica. And I am thrilled to get to be with you all to talk about compassion resilience today. Very much on my own journey, as I believe we all are, when it comes to integrating these concepts into my own personal and professional life. So know that while we're here as your presenters today, we're just as much learners alongside you. So we look forward to your engagement throughout this process. And a little bit about the lens I'm bringing, also social worker and come from many, many years in the nonprofit world, lots of connection to school environments, middle and high schools specifically, and supporting the mental well-being of our students. And come from an equity perspective as well. So excited to be able to help us all look at those connections when we look at compassion resilience today throughout our time together. I spent a good number of years in St. Louis, Missouri, about 11. So I'm giving a high five and wave to my St. Louis area, Missouri, East St. Louis folks. Good to be with you. I'm joining you, though, today from Milwaukee, Wisconsin. So just excited to get this conversation started. And Brittany, turn it back over to you.
All right. So with many things, a lot of you coming from the West Coast. I know I've seen some East Coast. We are here in the Central region. Just wanting to ground us today in this space together. Whatever you're coming with, distractions, situations, we just want you to block all of that out, leave it outside of this space together for these 3 hours. And we want to just get in a mindful moment. All right. And what this really does is it helps to ground us, center us in our space together. It helps us to be engaged with one another, helps us to just be all in. So if we can just take a little moment, whatever you need to do, if it's taking your eyes off the screen, turning off your cameras, but I want you to find a comfortable position with your feet planted on the ground. Again, if it's taking your eyes off the screen, lowering your gaze, closing your eyes if you're comfortable with that. And I just want you to bring your attention inwards towards your breathing. Visualize the things that may be distracting and placing them outside of this space today. Okay, we have just a good amount of time together. We just want to let those distractions, just set those aside for this time. And once you set any distractions outside of the room or this space, bring to mind your intention for today. What is it that you want to gain? What do you want to get out of our time together? Visualize placing that intention right in front of you. With your intent here in the room with you, just take a couple slow, deep breaths. And when you feel ready, go ahead, open your eyes, come back to the group. One thing I do want to add, please take time for yourselves, water breaks, bathroom breaks, whatever you need, just to make sure that you are taking care of yourself. Okay, we do talk about ways of taking care of ourselves, but I want to make sure that that is noted in the beginning so that you know that it is nothing wrong with taking care of the needs of yourself. So, before we get into any of today's content and just great discussion, just want to go over some goals that we will hit on throughout our time together. So, we want to look at building your capacity to guide the ongoing evolution of a compassionate workplace. All right, so we say workplace, but really, the toolkit and compassion resilience can be used in any setting, at home, with friends, in the community. So, yes, in the workplace, but wherever you want to build your compassion, visualize. Okay, really specify where you want to build that compassion and focus on that. We also want to experience leadership and staff practices that establish and maintain compassionate cultures. Okay, throughout our time today, we will talk about compassionate cultures, what that looks like, but whatever position you hold, whatever role you have, whether in the workplace or just in life, taking on that leadership responsibility and just branching out, okay, looking at how to build compassionate cultures in whatever setting you may be in. And then lastly, exploring resources to bring back to your team. Okay, again, we talk about the workplace setting, but this can also apply to the community, to your family. All right, so we're giving resources just to help in all capacities that you hold a role in, hold a position in. Okay, so just wanting to hit on some of those goals. And now we will just look at why we are doing this work.
Thank you, Brittany. Let me give you a little roadmap to the next 2.5 hours. You have given us the gift of your time. And so just know that there will be engaging learning for you to choose to participate. There'll be polls, there'll be breakouts, there'll be self reflection. We've got 2 breaks built in for you, 10 minutes apiece, so you can relax and step back from this learning experience. And again, the toolkit that we're going to show you is just to empower you. It's to leave you feeling stronger, both personally and maybe as a colleague or a leader. So, we always want to start with the why of this work. Why might it be important to promote compassion in our work culture? Why should we have an explicit focus on well being? The systems and structures that either support us or make us very tired. So we want to tap into y'all right away. We're not going to wait because we know we got an incredible learning community right here in the house. And so there's a mentee poll that just landed in the chat. And here are your instructions. Please share a word, 2 at the most, but a word or 2 to describe a culture that is a work culture, specifically that is predominantly compassionate. It's the kind of workplace that you want to show up to every day, where compassion is offered to those we serve, to our colleagues, to our collaborators, and our leaders. What would it look like in a word or 2 if you worked for a compassionate culture? Yes, here they come. Let's build this together. This is collective learning here, colleagues. I'm seeing some beautiful things come in: trauma informed, empathy and listening, kindness, lots of kindness, a focus on the human, empathic and forgiving. Oh, you all got some good ideas about this. A stance of acceptance, respect for diversity. Look at us all. Yeah, just weigh in. What would your workplace look like if it was compassionate at the center? It would also be courageous and vulnerable. Hmm. And as the words get bigger, it means that your word has been offered more than once. We're seeing some coming together of a supportive, understanding, and empathic workplace that's centered around listening. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. I love watching this unfold. Yes. See us all? We are putting our words right into the room. Beautiful, beautiful. So if you will now, what I'm hoping to do, you're going to see this again. So if you're still weighing in, no problem, because this visual is coming right back at you later so that we have a collective understanding about compassion in the workplace. So what I'd like to do now is share with you a little bit about the why, getting further into kind of the rationale for doing work in the area of compassionate culture. So, as was mentioned in the beginning, this toolkit, and Emily, why don't you just throw the toolkit link right in the chat, just in case anybody can't stand it for a minute and they want to peek. You're welcome to look at this free resource anytime that you want to. So we were working on a grant in Wisconsin here, a big one. In fact, they put this darn social worker in charge of 10 million bucks. What is happening? Social worker with money. It was beautiful. And one of the things that we discovered is that we could give school districts and other folks lots of money, but what money alone wasn't the answer in terms of creating mental health supports, in this case in schools that were innovative. We knew that what was getting in the way sometimes on the grant was that people were tired. There was turnover. There was tough times with retention. This was back in 2014 to 19, and y'all, COVID has done a number. So it's not like that's changed. The landscape is even more complicated. So why? Why might it be important to focus on this work? And we know that practitioners, we are the instruments of our craft. In whatever setting you work in, as the humans who support and help others, our client, our student success, we're an integral part of that. And so one of my favorite moments in the training room when I'm offering this work is often when people say, my reservoir is empty. I don't have anything to give. And that's impacting how I treat the people I serve. Of course it is. So that's real, that's honest. And people always get at the why, that we need a reservoir of our own compassion, our self compassion, our energy, and able to be able to continue to serve. Staff retention, I don't know about you all, but my goodness, staff turnover is real, real, and more real. People are coming and going. They're moving spots a lot right now. You're trying to build systems and protocols and practices, and it's hard to maintain them. It's tough. And so, staff retention is a goal of this toolkit. This could be a why that you would offer to your team or leader to engage in this work. And then there's the role of collegial supports. When people talk about what's most important at work, they're talking about feeling valued, about somebody having their back in the good moments, in the hard moments. Your collegial relationships impact your job satisfaction. Yes? Who you work with matters, and your boss, let's just say, right? If you have a good relationship with your boss and there's great communication and some validation for what you do and listening when the work gets hard, it matters. So that this, you can see that the toolkit is very focused on relationships and culture. It is not an invitation to the burnout party. It is not yoga and a candle and eat less chips and get a pedometer. Okay, that's not what we're talking about today. We're talking about something that's much deeper than that. We know that staff turnover is having an economic impact, right? It's so expensive to replace people, and people are tired. We're having absenteeism. I'm not telling you anything y'all don't know, right? But these are our whys. This is why we want to put this work front and center. I'm seeing in the chat that having mentors is huge for retention. I agree, Celia. Beautiful organizational commitments that say our well-being matters. And that's embedded, that's baked into policies and procedures and team meetings of ways of being. Do you go to team meetings that say, how are you? Let's talk about how we're doing here. Uh, how are you feeling? Are you tired? What supports do you need? Can we talk about boundaries? All this kind of stuff. Job satisfaction, as you can imagine, is tied to whether we want to show up at work, and then the goal of innovation. And this is the thing that really got my attention, was that it was really hard for people who were tired to try new things, new evidence-based practices, new ways of being with our clients, our students, the people we serve, because it was hard to take a risk, let go of business as usual, and try something new. So that's another piece of the why on doing this kind of work. So I want to talk to you about, now I'm going to invite you to the foundation of the house. Because before we let you in the front door, I gotta tell you how we built this house and what informs it. So a compassionate work culture, you can see right here in front of you, three main pillars, right? Equity, trauma-informed care, and what we'll teach you today on compassion resilience and what that actually means. And so we're trying to build healthy work cultures where people get to show up as their best selves. We're grounding this work in trauma-informed values, and I'm going to remind you all what they are. We know them, but let's pause and really think about them today. So the values are safety, choice, collaboration, trustworthiness, empowerment, and cultural responsiveness. So, in this toolkit, what you'll see are individual and team activities where people are allowed to be honored, to be listened to be supported in exploring the expression of their values and their well being. So, you'll see you've got all kinds of easy things to grab that can create these conversations that are so meaningful and get below the work and the focus on the other to focusing, holding up the mirror, and also extending your hands in compassion for each other. We know that people are working in the real and painful context of oppression, racism, sexism, classism. All of this contributes extra to fatigue. And without it being openly named and addressed whenever possible, it exacerbates stress. It makes folks feel more isolated, and that could take an extraordinary toll on folks. So the equity lens says we have to name and notice the context that we work in. You'll see that the toolkit attempts to address this. And even more important, we want to create some tools at the team and organizational levels to address the impact of systems that aren't working so well for us, so that we can have conversations with each other that walk alongside without judgment. We can recognize our strengths, but we are also accountable to changing our work culture in such a way that we are supported, that learning and transformation are our core methodology. All right, I'm seeing, Dawn, that there's a little trouble with the sound. Are we okay, folks? Let me know.
I hear you all right, Monica.
All right. Okay, so next I want to talk to you a little bit, just ground us back in equity, and just let's take in this visual here. Just take a look at this. You maybe have seen this before, perhaps. Let's take this in. And that's to ground us in the foundation that folks get what they need, not what is fair or equal. I worked in schools a long time. Boy, do we get stuck in that everybody gets the same thing and it's all cookie cutter and all this other business. So we want to dismantle that. The toolkit is very oriented to thinking about a non-prescriptive way for folks to get support. Let's take a look at that more deeply, the connection between this work and equity. So we don't consider ourselves, y'all, from Wisconsin. Here we are. We have made this beautiful thing. It's taken us 7 or 8 years to create it. We've piloted, we've beta tested, we get lots of feedback. We're in a continuous improvement. And guess what? We don't pretend we know all the things. And so that is modeled in the toolkit, that it's not built on expert mindset. It is built on a collaborative. In fact, I would say it's built on beginner's mind. This idea that we're just getting started, that it leads with curiosity. It also encourages people to hold up the mirror to their own personal biases. You're going to have a chance to do that yourself in a few minutes here when we learn about compassion in action. We acknowledge oppression's impact on fatigue. We know that the locus of control, where you put your attention, where you have your influence, really matters. And so that's an important part of the toolkit you'll see a little bit more of. And on the next slide, we have a few more examples about the focus of this toolkit and well-being. We can set compassionate boundaries around topics of equity. I think you heard that walking into this room, that there was a focus on transformation and accountability. We can elevate staff voices to leadership. Are those most impacted by the workplace? Do they have a voice in describing what does positive culture look like? What does wellness look like? So we want to look at wellness through a holistic approach that avoids really being prescriptive. So the next slide is okay. So are you ready now? I want you to buckle in here. So I gave you a little background. I looked at the basement of the house, and now we got to have you look inward here at some of your attitudes, values, and beliefs. Did you sign up for that? That you were going to hold up the mirror today? Well, let's do it. We can do this. So I want you to reflect for a little bit on what you see in our field, on the on what people fundamentally believe about behavior. And this is the work of Dr. Ross Green. You'll see the website there, Lives in the Balance, and he challenges us to ask these questions. Do our clients, our parents, and our colleagues, do they well if they want to? Are they just like they're out there and they're trying, to be a good colleague or be a good practitioner, but they must just not want to because they're falling short, which means they're manipulative. They want attention. They're not motivated. They don't care. I think about our students with their hoods up in the back of class, exhausted because the night before something really hard happened. But what's the narrative that gets spoken about this young person is he doesn't care. He's not motivated. He's checked out. And I couldn't agree with you more, Shanine from Utah. Language has power, and how we perceive it is important. You're absolutely right about that. And so people do well if they want to, is one way of looking at the world. And it's very steeped in individualism, capitalism, patriarchy, bootstraps, all of that. It's part of what we sort of the air we breathe. We are encouraging folks in this way of being to dismantle that. In fact, that people do well if they can. If we have a generous assumption about folks, they're coping in the way that they best know how, that they may have a skill that they need to develop, that something might be in their way. And instead of saying, hey, you're being manipulative and I'm going to maybe punish you out of that or have a talk with you, instead, it's a partnership relationship. Together, we can figure this out. What do you need? What are the skills that you need? What's in the way? And are you just doing the best that you can? So that's foundational now. So that's holding up the mirror to those beliefs that are steeped in your system on a day in, day out basis, teams, services we provide. So the other thing that we want to look at is this whole idea of internalized blame or internalized shame. So when we are in our work and we're out there doing the best that we can, and we run into a mistake or a problem or a barrier, or the list at the end of the day is always too long, we can't get through it, we start to question ourselves. We question our esteem. Am I good enough? Am I good enough? What if I'm not good at this? What if I'm falling short? What if I'm letting people down? Our sense of efficacy is threatened. I might not be able. I might not be the person who can do this job. And then we run into trouble. It creates all kinds of difficulties for us. We avoid, we get angry, we get to the point where we don't care. So why try? Do you see this cycle? Oh my. Just a pause here to observe how things like, because in our systems where we work, which are often under resourced, and we show up trying to do our best, working hard with our best intentions, and we come up short, if we begin to blame ourselves, we have to shed light on that. Blame and shame do best in the darkness. And so the toolkit actually encourages us to open up these conversations so we can realize we're not alone. We're feeling it. We're feeling this idea is that I'm trying so hard and I can't get caught up. And so that's an important piece of fatigue. So next, I want to just offer you one other kind of interesting, maybe unintended consequence of this trauma-sensitive and informed perspective is that, collectively we're asking people to ask the question, what happened to you, not what's wrong with you. And so we've got a lot of folks that are opening up their hearts to hear stories. I think about teachers specifically, right? Or other people who are like asking questions, realizing they're part of the solution. And then they hear the stories because if people ask, they will trust you to tell them. And then they hear stories of hardship and their heart hurts and they get worn down by the stories. Being on the front line can wear you down, just holding space compassionately for other people. So, again, we're trying to figure out how to create a pathway for people to have open hearts, but protected hearts, boundaries, work-life balance, so that we can receive with compassion and acceptance what our clients and students and others, parents offer us, but also be able to stay well in this important work that we do. So now what I'd like you to do is, as I've had you hold up the mirror looking at these fundamental beliefs, I'd like to kind of visually show you with video 1 here. So video 1 is going to happen now. I want you to take it in. This video is called The Labels We Carry. And I want you to take a look, as our colleagues have mentioned, the power of language. Ooh. I'm just going to pause here, let the emotions follow, and just have the experience of the power of language. And it matters for, of course, the people we serve. It matters also for our colleagues, our leaders, our collaborators, our families, our kids, all of that. Okay, finding my feet under me again. I will try to get back into my head, but I never run away from what this work does to your heart, your mind, your spirit. And so, for us to build compassion resilience, I want you to know, what do we mean by that? Yes, words matter, folks. I see you. I see you. When someone shows me love, all the judgment falls away. Woo! Okay. So, compassion resilience as a definition is this, and you can see it on the screen. It's the power to return to a position of empathy and strength and hope after we witness the daily challenges of youth and families and our colleagues and what we face in our community and the realities of the workplace. It's to be optimistic, to find hope in our imperfect world, our imperfect systems, which is why you're all here. You're here at the SOC Summit because this is exactly what we need to focus on. Systems change when people do. And so that's what we're here to talk with you about today. Emily, you are up.
Thank you, Monica. Yeah, so here, as Monica mentioned, building up this foundation of all the pieces necessary to create a compassion a compassionate workplace culture, a compassionate family culture, a place that we can all thrive and be our best, and drop the labels that society's given us and focus in on those that we identify with and those we need in our lives. We've, in the creation of this broader resource that Monica's mentioned a couple of times, the Compassion Resilience Toolkit, have found that there are 7 main components embedded within. We're only going to touch on a handful of them over the time that we have together, but you'll be able to explore them in more depth on your own time. And they break into these 7 components, first starting with building one's foundation around what do we need in order to act consistently in a place of compassion. And the first component is really, what does compassion look like in action? And we're going to demonstrate for you our model for that. We all have many different models that we work with in our lives. And we found when we're able to have a common language, it's helpful in order to have some deeper understanding of how to support each other. It also looks at what is kind of the opposite of compassion resilience, which is that of compassion fatigue. What are the different stages associated with that? And what drives our feelings of compassion fatigue, along with our feelings of compassion resilience? And of all those items, where does our locus of control fall? We also then look at, throughout this resource, about how do we maintain that 3 lens, the lens of what does this mean for me as an individual? What does it mean for my team? And what does it mean for my broader organization and system? As Monica mentioned, it's not about the yoga and a candle per se, though not to say that's not helpful at times, but certainly looking at what do we need to be doing at more the team and system approach, organizational lens, in order to build these structures to support one's ability to live in a place of compassion resilience. We find that a lot of times one of the things that drives our fatigue and also our resilience is one around expectations, our own expectations and expectations others have of us. So we could take some time to really dig into what that looks like, and then follow it with looking at boundaries and the importance of setting compassionate boundaries. We can't say yes to everything, or at least do it well. We have to say no to some things. So how do we ground ourselves in our yeses, the things that are most important, to inform the things we need to say no to? This then gets wrapped into this conversation around accountability. How do I hold myself accountable for the kind of culture that I want to have within my work and home life? And how do I support others in doing the same? So we have a little structure around that we'll explore with you today here too. And then finally, these individual well-being practices. Definitely a piece of the puzzle, intentionally put towards the end of the resource, again, to prioritize that team and system level approach. But very much important to our sense of individual well-being is looking at it from a very holistic lens. Before I show you, and I'm going to dive in just for a moment into that online resource that we put into chat a couple more times. Before I do want to take a moment just to acknowledge the wisdom, the expertise, the perspectives, the love, the support that went into the creation of the Compassion Resilience Toolkit. And while Rogers Behavioral Health and the Department of Public Instruction in Wisconsin were members at the table, they were not the only members. Lots of individuals, lots of bodies of work, lots of expertise from various cultures are embedded into this resource. So as a way to honor that, I do want to take a moment to pause. I'm going to just read the statement on our slide and then give us a moment just to reflect on that. Many of the concepts, symbols, and approaches of the toolkits are cross-cultural, iconic, and connect us to our common humanity. Please join us to pause in gratitude for the wisdom we've learned through many cultures. May we honor them through our words and actions. And you'll see we call out and highlight some of that wisdom throughout the toolkit resource, and we'll do so throughout our time together here as well. But impossible to be able to make sure we get every single individual incorporated. So thank you for that moment to pause in recognition. What I'm sharing with you here is the website itself. We're going to get another link into chat just in case you'd like to jump alongside me. Feel free to do so. We do have 3 different toolkits available. This, again, is a free resource you can take after today, use as you see fit, hopefully to improve your workplace cultures or your family spaces. We have here the schools, health and human services, and the parent and caregiver toolkit. I'm just going to jump into the schools one. And the school and health and human services are pretty similar in core content. There's some sector specific examples that are different, but the main components are the same. And then the parent and caregiver one provides a lens at that family level, or in a perspective of if you're a one-to-one caregiver with, let's say, your spouse, for example, you're caring for your spouse or you're caring for an extended family member. And you still want to think about how to remain in a place of compassion, resilience in that environment. That hopefully is a helpful resource to you. I'll tell you just briefly what that last toolkit's about here as I wrap up the online version of the toolkit. So our toolkits here all look the same. There's going to be a bar along the left-hand side that will give you kind of an overview of some of the core components that are integrated into the toolkit, along with resources available for you if you choose to use it, may be helpful. And then the sections are along the left side, and there's 12 total in the school and health and human services. There's 8 in the parent and caregiver. And each section is going to be outlined the same. You'll have an introduction at the top that will tell you a little bit about what to expect in that section. Then there will be a 2 to 4 page document that gives your group that you may be working with a better sense of what that section entails. A lot of times when we do this compassion resilience work, we'll do it in small group spaces, anywhere from 10 to 15 people. And we'll hold it over a series of times. So we have up to 12 for each one of these sections. We may have up to 12 groups total. So this is a group that reoccurring, coming back together to have these conversations, to do our best to ground ourselves in a sense of creating and maintaining a compassionate workplace culture. So in order to be able to access this full resource, it's helpful to be able to share this little pre-read here, this information document with participants ahead of time so they know what to expect. And thank you in the chat. I see there's a couple folks asking for that website again. Brittany, if you could help me by popping that into chat, I'd appreciate your support. After that, then we have our application section. And this is really where the meat of the toolkit lies for each section. It gives you a key activity. If you're not going to do anything else for that section, here's the activity to choose. It also gives you a key wellness practice to use in your group space or with your full staff, if that's how you're integrating it. And then if you're interested in leading a group, we do give you a template to follow when it comes to a circle agenda. And we do all this work in a circle format. We do that because, as I mentioned at the beginning, all of us are on a journey when it comes to compassion resilience. No one's arrived. So we all have things to learn from each other and wisdom to share with each other. And we find sitting in that circle format or in embodying that when we do it virtually as much as possible can really benefit everybody's experience and deepen their learning and connection. So if you're looking for, hey, what does it look like in a 50-minute time period, you can check out the Circle Agenda link and it will talk you through and have a whole structure for that time. We also found that it's helpful to have a core visual for each one of the sections. This can be something that you post in common areas after your conversations and just serve as a reminder to people of what it was discussed, maybe provide an opportunity for some ongoing conversation. If there's any supplementary activities associated with that section, they'll be linked there. And then there is a document that has all of the above things in one PDF for easy printing, so you don't have to print each individually. We have found that in order to do the kind of cultural level work that we'd like to see with the Compassion Resilience Toolkit, or we know is necessary in order to create and maintain a culture of compassion, we've got to have leaders on board and not just okaying it, but very much modeling it, embodying the concepts that we're talking about. So we do provide some additional resources specifically for leadership in each section that hopefully provides as a tool to have some additional talking or group work with the leader and or the leadership team. So as I mentioned, each one of these sections, it's available with the same outline. After you click on the third PDF, you're asked to create an account. It remains free. It's just so that our team has a sense of the use that's happening with the toolkit and if we make any major updates so we can email everybody and let them know. And then at the end, there's some additional resources that can help with your implementation or understanding of the toolkit. For example, Monica mentioned Ross Green, Dr. Ross Green earlier in her introduction components. We have a whole section here, foundational beliefs about behavior, that digs a little bit more into Ross Green's work that you can use, perhaps share with your teams if helpful. So again, we just want to take a moment to share that. This is a lot of where our resources are going to be coming from during our time together today. And great, we got a little prompt there right on the screen. In case you didn't find it in the chat, it broadcasted so you can jump online if that's of interest to you. As I mentioned, there's a whole third toolkit there with the parent and caregiver option. And I just want to share with you an overview, just a slide that shows you what that content includes. Because I know, at least on the registration, and I'm hopeful that a number of our folks joining us today are joining as a parent, as a caregiver. And we recognize that this content is just as, if not maybe more important to you in that role than it is in any sort of professional role. So that's why we have a whole resource and toolkit dedicated to that part of our identities as parents and caregivers. And just to kind of give you a glimpse of the content that's embedded in that, you're going to see a lot of similarities to what we're discussing today. And I encourage you, as you engage throughout our presentation, if we use an example that's in a professional space, just to from a caregiver's perspective and continue to think about what of these things are you already integrating into your life as a caregiver, or perhaps something worth exploring to see if it brings any benefit to creating a sense of well-being for you in that role and a sense of creating that culture of compassion in that family environment. I can tell you, as a mom of a 5-year-old and a 1-year-old, I get a lot of use out of the School and Health and Human Services Toolkit, but I probably get the most out of the parent and caregiver because I think it's one of the hardest jobs by far I've ever had. So, and even though I've been supporting this work for a number of years, I continue to find benefit from it. So I encourage you to poke around and see what's of use and helpful to you. As I mentioned there at the beginning of showing you what to expect in the toolkit, one of the first things I said was that the building that foundation and making sure we all have a working definition of what compassion looks like in action. And I feel with a high level of certainty, if I asked everyone in this group right now to share with us, what does compassion look like in action? There'd be some common themes, but there'd probably be some nuanced differences too. We found as we started to support this work among teams or even across family units, having that common understanding of what compassion looks like in action can be really beneficial. Even if it serves as a placeholder where you have the conversation, you as a team say, oh, we want to tweak this or add this, please do. But just even having that chance to have conversation about it can be great for getting you on that road towards creating and maintaining a compassionate workplace home culture. So I want to share with you a little bit about the model that we're working from. And it's got 6 steps total. The first one is around notice. So this is when we're getting ready to engage in these steps when somebody has come to us in some level of pain. We feel a desire to act in a compassionate way. And compassion is all about we notice pain and we want to take action. We want to do something to alleviate it. So first, we have to notice that it's even there, which can be really hard for us as humans to do. And sometimes we're just not in a place to do so. So in our work, we talk a lot about boundaries. This is actually the first place you can set a boundary, is that if you notice a certain level of pain in someone, or perhaps they even come to you in need of support, it's actually more compassionate for you to say, oh, I really want to be here to support you right now, and I can't. I'm distracted with X, or I'm heading out the door to go do Y. Can we touch base in an hour tomorrow? Or even, can you touch base with so-and-so? I know they're available right now. Setting that boundary is more compassionate than trying to struggle through, because we want to give our best selves to others, particularly when we're trying to show up in a way that's compassionate. So if we can't, we can say we can't in the moment. And I recognize sometimes we can't say we can't. It's in the thick of things. We can't always choose that. But sometimes we do. We do have the opportunity to say, hey, pause. I want to be here for you. Let's connect at a later time so I can be fully present. So as we notice, we're being aware of the surroundings around us, and we're saying, okay, here's someone in pain and I want to be there I'm going to move on to the second step. And this second step is inward. You're turning inward to yourself. You've noticed some sort of distress in someone else. You want to do your own self-check first. Each of us, because we're human, each of us brings to every interaction a number of biases. We bring our personal experience. We bring our emotions. We bring all sorts of stuff that can get in the way of us being fully present for the person in front of us. So we want to do our best as we start to hear and engage with this individual, try to show up in a compassionate way. We want to be aware of what's coming up in our heads and do our best to set it aside. If we need to come back to some of it later, we can. But for now, we want to think about how we set it aside so we can stay in the moment with this person. As we do that and we're listening, that's a key word, we're listening, not talking. When listening to what somebody has to share with us, we're doing our best to pull out two core components. We're trying to identify what are the strengths that we hear in their share. Even when someone is in deep distress or suffering and pain, they oftentimes have glimmers of strength that are coming out in their share. We want to hone in on those. We also want to take this opportunity to focus on the feelings that this person is communicating through their share. This opportunity to focus on these two parts, we find it is like the most important components. All the minor details, he said, they said components, we don't have to worry about as much if we can bring our focus to the strengths and the feelings that we hear conveyed through that story. As we tap into these feelings, we then move into this fourth step. This is this one of cultivating empathy. It is impossible for any one of us to say we know exactly how someone else feels. Even if you and I were sitting in the exact same room and we'd had pretty much the same upbringing, exposed to similar things, we are going to experience it maybe completely differently, if not slightly differently. So it's best when we're cultivating empathy, we're doing our best just to connect to that root feeling that we think we perhaps have experienced in our life at some point. And we're doing so in a way that then we are almost sitting ourselves down next to this person. Right? We're visually seeing ourselves next to this person in support with them. This cultivating empathy step keeps us motivated in the conversation. It keeps that individual centered. And as Monica mentioned earlier, it takes us out of that kind of head space and brings us back into that heart space. As we then move on to this next step of discern best action, step number 5, there's actually another self-check between cultivating an empathy and discerning best action. 2 types of self-check. One, when we cultivate empathy, sometimes we can go so deep that we start to bring up that feeling that we can empathize with, and we bring back that experience that made us feel that way, and we're now completely off on a different road. We're no longer with that person. So we want to do a self-check. Are we still present with this individual? I want to bring myself back. I don't want to go so deep in empathizing that I'm lost in my own world, just enough to see myself sitting next to this person and feel connected. I also do another self-check. It's natural at this point in the steps for us to feel a strong desire to give advice. We want to jump in. We want to say, oh, this is how you should do it. Have you tried this? And most of the time, the solutions that we come up with are for ourselves, inside ourselves, are much more effective than any sort of solution someone else is giving us. So in our discerning best action step, we are doing our best to ask those amazing open-ended questions to help them think deeper about what they want to do next. We're even asking questions about how can I best support you? And if it feels like the person's truly stuck and needs some advice on what to do next to alleviate the suffering, to change their path, that we ask permission before we give it. For example, I may say, hey, it seems you're stuck. I've experienced something similar in the past. Would you like to hear how I approached it? it gives the person who we're supporting the opportunity to decide, A, is this actually something that's helpful that they need? And B, if it is, it kind of shifts their mind and gets them into a place to engage in that conversation differently. I really appreciate the asking before giving advice. It's honoring the wisdom and expertise that person already has. They don't necessarily need us to share our thoughts. So this discerning best actions all about how are we're supporting them and thinking about what they want to do next and come to a next step. And after they do, we want to make sure that we take action with any sort of commitment that we may have made. It's another chance for boundaries. So let's say in discerning best action, the person you're supporting says, "Oh, yes, you know what? I do need your help. Can we check in after work today to talk a little bit more about this?" And in your head, you know, "Oh, I got to run to get my daughter so we can go to soccer practice and then get home to dinner." You're like, "That's just not going to work for me. I'm not going to be available. And even if I force myself to be available, I'm mentally going to be pretty stressed out." So, another chance for boundaries. I'm going to stop and say, "Unfortunately, I can't be available this afternoon. I can check in the morning." And then make sure we do so, right? We never want to commit to something and not be able to follow through. It can oftentimes wash away the support we provided in the first 5 steps. So, again, these 6 steps of compassionate action steps, I guarantee, given the folks that we're on this call with, this is not new information to you. And I also know it's something that no human has perfected. It's one thing that we are all working on. So, this is just a model that I offer you to consider as you engage, perhaps something to share with other teammates and see if it works for you. And we want you to get a chance to play with it a bit and consider it in relation to a scenario. So, I'm going to share a scenario and know that what's coming up here in a moment, folks, is going to be your first breakout group time. And you're going to get a chance to talk about this scenario in your small breakout groups. But first, to share this scenario. A colleague shares with you that one of her 12-year-old patients is really on her mind. He really struggled at first to engage in treatment, and this colleague seemed to be able to reach him when others failed. His family has lots of challenges, and he has so much potential. Recently, he shut down and is acting out with tears and tantrums. She tells you he hit her, and she didn't tell her supervisor to avoid consequences for him. She even shows you the bruise. She loses sleep and wakes up with him on her mind, and she tells you that she may be the only one who can get through to him. She's considering an outing with him on a Saturday to give his family a break. She clearly cares and is definitely stressed. So in a moment, you're going to get a chance to walk through those, really the last 5 steps. We're going to assume you've already noticed this person's pain. You're going to pick it up with self-check and walk through this scenario as a group and think about how you may approach it. There's a couple of things I'm going to provide you as you get ready for breakout groups. First, before I dig into logistics, we do want to put into, I'll pop, actually, I've got a slide for it. Thank you. We've got 2 things coming to you at the same time. One right in front of you should have a broadcasted folder. If you click that folder, it's our resource folder for this presentation. If you haven't found the PowerPoint yet, it'll be linked in there. And it's also going to have a breakout group questions. There's one available in Spanish and there's one available in English. They will walk you through the questions to talk about in a small group. So please do take a moment to open that OneDrive folder and access breakout group questions. And as you get ready to engage with each other in that space, in addition to that accountability space agreement that Elizabeth reminded us of at the beginning of our time together, we also want you just to ground yourself in these group agreements. Particularly in our small group spaces, please do your best to be mentally present. I know there's lots of opportunities for distractions, but when we're in this, we're going to have 10 minutes together in this small breakout. Do your best to be mentally present in that space. As people share, we're listening to understand, not to respond. We're going to honor confidentiality, which shared there stays there, and give each other lots of grace. We're all human. We're on platforms, we're virtual, we're human beings coming with all sorts of stuff. So we're going to give each other grace along the way too. All right. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Ashley to give us some logistics as it relates to breakout groups.
Hey there. Thanks again. And I think a lot of us have started to see and find that there are call to action buttons that show up on your screen. It's personalized to you. You can click on buttons and features to access the resources that Emily, Monica, and Brittany have shared. I'm also right now going to demonstrate again how you can access things like the OneDrive folder. So I'm going to show it on the stage. You can click the button. Sorry for my typo there, typing really fast on my end. And I also want to remind everyone as we navigate to our breakout rooms, if there is someone there in the room who may need some help being held accountable, maybe there's some activity happening that needs to be brought to my attention or the attention of the speakers, please navigate to the people button at the top of the session on the right hand corner. You can click on that button and then search for my name, search for Ashley. And then you can send me a direct message. Send that direct message to me, Ashley Singleton, or to Tracy Levins. She is the co-director of our center, and she's also helping us respond to questions, comments, and concerns. So send a DM to me or Tracy if there are things happening in the breakout room that needs some attention. Okay. With that being said, Tam May, can you please send us to breakout rooms?
Welcome back. And I want to just double check, Ashley, are we good to move forward on our end? Great. All right. So welcome back, everybody. Thank you for your patience with the breakout groups, your willingness to lean in here. We wanted to make sure this was an engaging journey for you. And we thought, 3 hours just in this main room may be a lot. So we did have this opportunity. We'll have one more opportunity towards the end of our time together where you'll get in a breakout group, and we'll give you some more directions before then. So hopefully it's even smoother ride. I hope you had a chance to engage at least for a few minutes with those in your space, and you got to think about how that scenario connects back to the compassionate action steps, and perhaps even some challenges that may bring up for you and ways you could integrate this moving forward. I'm going to move us on and turn it over to Brittany to give us a practice before we take our first break.
So, as we open the day with the mindful practice, just want to give another resource to help with interactions with others that you may, have a negative interaction with or challenging interaction with. And so, with this practice, it's called Just Like Me. And you can use this with students, colleagues, family members, just when your feelings of compassion seems to just be out of reach for you. So right now, we'll practice this by asking you to bring to mind someone whom you have a little difficulty with at times, whether it's interacting with them or connecting with them. And it'll just help you to bring yourself out of a place of judgment in that time of that tough interaction with another person. So, as you see on the screen, I will read it aloud, but just follow along and just give yourself a moment to think about somebody whom in the past or even currently that you are having a difficult time connecting with or interacting with. Just like me, this person is seeking happiness in their life. Just like me, this person is trying to avoid suffering in their life. Just like me, this person has known sadness, loneliness, and despair. Just like me, this person is seeking to fill their needs. Just like me, this person is learning about life. So again, this just takes away that judgment piece. And when our compassion is out of reach, can kind of just take our mindsets and put it on that person whom we're having difficulties connecting with. Just like you, they're also trying to fulfill whatever it is in their life that they're trying to get to. And so with that practice, we are going to take a 10-minute break just to give you all a moment to get that water, go to the bathroom, get a bite to eat or a snack. Just take care of yourself for these next 10 minutes. All right, so it is 1:31 Central Time, 11:31 Pacific, 2:31 Eastern. We will see you all back in 10 minutes, so about 1:41 Central Time. Take care of yourselves. Welcome back, everyone. I will give a little bit of time just to let everyone get settled in. Coming back from whatever it was that you needed to do. Because how fitting. The next thing we're talking about is self-compassion. How are we taking care of ourselves? All right, so when we leave this space and we get back to our regular lives in normal living, we technically read things from left to right. Today, I'm going to read things from right to left, just to get a better and clearer understanding of what self-compassion is to all of you. So when we talk about self-compassion, we hear so many different things, how we take care of ourselves, wellness, wellness practices, what we do, what things we may do. And we pull from the work of Dr. Kristen Neff, and she just gives a good picture of what self-compassion means. So if we're looking right to left today, looking at mindfulness, what does that mean? Noticing our struggle, feeling it. Instead of being reactive, be with it. So sitting with whatever it is that we may be dealing with. Okay, not avoiding, um, self-judgment and overreaction. So if we just whatever it is that you may be going through on a day-to-day, sitting with it, reflecting with it, letting yourself just take it all in, and then whatever it looks like or feels like for you to create a space to dissect it and then to get rid of it. All right, that is what that mindfulness practice looks like, and that's why we also open the day with the mindful practice. It's just putting ourselves in the moment. Okay, getting rid of whatever is distracting us, whatever may be bothering us, whether it's work related, home life, friends, family, what have you. How are we being mindful to ourselves, being attentive and paying attention to what it is that may be causing us stress, causing our bodies to just feel physical ailments. Okay, so sitting with it, being with it, not avoiding it, and just understanding that, we are all human, which moves us to the common humanity side. Everyone suffers. Okay, we are not perfect. No one is, but you're also not alone in that. Right? Understanding that mistakes will happen, things come up, challenges come up, situations come up, different struggles, different circumstances happen. But that's what makes us human. And understanding that as humans, that's where we are, that's where we thrive, that's where we become our best selves. Understanding that we're not alone. Okay, I can look at the person sitting next to me, understanding that their struggles may be their own, but I can walk with them. That's that common humanity piece, helping them, showing them support, that you don't have to suffer alone. No, you may not be perfect, but our flaws are what makes us just incredible people. Okay, and then that moves us to our self-kindness. All right, being loving towards ourselves instead of self-critical. All right, we are great at giving support, giving love, giving compassion, giving empathy, positivity to those outside of ourselves. But when we look inward, we are our biggest critics. Why is that? That answer seems to still be unknown. And so this is why we have this conversation of self-compassion, because the love, support, the care that we give to others, we should be able to give it to ourselves. And just we should be honored to give it to ourselves. Okay? Because we carry ourselves whoever we work with, in our workspaces, with family, we give it so willingly, so compassionately, so loving to others. Love on ourselves that same way. Okay, and um, in the chat, we're going to drop just a link from Dr. Kristen Elf. She put together a self-compassion scale. It's just a resource just to look at where we fall on that self-compassion scale. Um, and it's just something that you can do whenever. Okay, maybe now you do the scale, and maybe 2 3 months from now, that your rating, how you did, may look so differently, because now you're more in tune with, yeah, I could have worked on my mindful practice or my self-kindness to myself. Okay, so it's just another something to give you all, to just help with improving. It's not a way of knocking you, saying, your self-compassion is terrible. No, it's a way of improving your self-compassion to yourself, loving yourself more. Okay, as we give it to those that we work with, in our workplace, whether it's our colleague, patients, students, parents that we may care for, family that we may care for, giving it to ourselves. Okay. So, in talking about self compassion, we also look at individual wellness practices. Now, as Emily went through the toolkit, she broke down that the toolkit is broken up in 12 sections. Okay. And the individual wellness practices falls in sections 8 and 11 in the toolkit. But I wanted to put it where self compassion was, because we don't want to go away from our well-being for ourselves and our self-compassion, and continue to build on our self-kindness and mindfulness to ourselves. All right, so compassion resilience is all about how we take care of ourselves. Okay, so we are going to just give you the wellness practice assessment to look over, to give you some time to reflect, complete, and then we'll just talk about what the compass assessment entails. So thank you, Ashley, for broadcasting that. If you all just want to look at the assessment for about a few minutes, complete it as far as you can get to. Again, it's just a way of bulking up the self-care, the mindfulness, the well-being practices that we hold for ourselves. How can we improve on that? And things that you may be doing right now, how do you continue to build on that? All right, so just giving you some time to sit with that and complete it as far as you can get. All right. All right. I invite you all back into the space together. No worries if you didn't complete it. That could just be something for you to reflect on after our time together today. It's a pretty extensive assessment, but again, it's just something for you all to be more mindful of how you're taking care of yourself, what it is that you may need in times of, when things just become chaotic and hectic. What practices do you have in place for yourself? So when we look at the uh, individual wellness compass, it pulls from a holistic model. If we can go to the next slide just so we can see the breakdown. Yes, thank you. It pulls from the holistic model of wellness developed by the Samaritan Family Wellness Foundation based out of Milwaukee, Wisconsin. The Wellness Compass incorporates the symbol of the compass developed over 2,000 years ago to represent guidance needed when we feel lost. While four colors encircling the compass design speaks to the wisdom of the medicine wheel used by many Native American cultures to guide development of a balanced life. The four sectors of the compass model, mind, spirit, strength, and heart, not only contribute to our overall wellness, but also provide guidance on strategies to help build our compassion resilience. So if you look at just each quadrant that the compass is made up of, looking at the mind, again, talking about that mindfulness and growth mindset, organizing our schedules, commitments, workspace, appreciative inquiry, reflection on competence. Okay, so when you did your assessment, you saw that the mind was broken up into two different quadrants to help with just figuring out where you are, what needs to maybe be improved in your life, or what can continue that's going well. Looking at the spirit, this is section 9 in the toolkit. Core values aligned with school missions, but then also looking at that balance of work and play to renew yourself. So are you just only focused on work, and then when you get home you are just completely burned out that you have no time for hanging out with friends or giving that extra time to your children or reading a book or watching some of your shows? Looking at that balance of that work life balance. The strength quadrant, which will be section 10, stress resilience to deal positively with the challenges of life. Okay, we all are hit with stress from different angles, different aspects. Okay, but we're talking about normal stress, all right? Not toxic, overwhelming stress when you talk about oppression, okay, in the systems or things of that nature. So normal stress. And also in this section, there is a wonderful TED talk by Kelly McGonigal um, that just talks about how you make stress your friend. Okay, and it sounds like an oxymoron. How do you make stress your friend? But it's just ways of taking on that stress and understanding how you can deal with it in a productive, positive way. Also, building healthy habits around physical well-being and ending unhealthy habits. All right, then looking at heart, this is section 11, self-compassion, emotional regulation, planning for adults, and relationship building with colleagues. Okay, how do you interact with those that you work with, your family? Okay, is your heart in the right place, or can it use some support, some positivity, some encouragement to just build up that heart? Okay, so this just when we talk about self compassion and the individual well being practices, we want to make sure that even though the toolkit looks at all levels of individual, teams, and systems, we don't want to go away from that individual and self compassion practices because it is very important. Okay. How can you expect to give 100% to others, maybe that you work with, coworkers, family, if you aren't in the right mindset, in the right space for yourself, and you're not giving it to yourself? Because so that's just what we wanted to just make sure that we hit on in this part, to make sure that you keep yourself important. Okay, you are important. The work that we do The work that you all do does not go unnoticed, but you can't possibly give yourself 100% if you're not giving 100% to yourself, if you're not giving it that love, that compassion back to yourself. So with all of that, we then move to the compassion fatigue cycle, the cycle of compassion fatigue. With this, we pull from the work of Eric Gentry, and he just captures what it means to just be in a cycle, whether in the workspace or your normal everyday life. Okay, he did not implement or incorporate the pictures of cats. We did that just to give a better visual of how to explain and understand each cycle. Okay, so as we move through, as we move through the cycle, the pictures of the cats will just give a better visualization of what each cycle means. Okay, so if we start in the cycle, the first stage in the cycle is the zealot stage. Now, put your uh, put your thinking caps on. Personally, I'm a mother, I'm a worker, I'm a friend, so I can pull from many different roles here. But when you're the zealot, let's just think of ourselves as we are walking through the door of a new job. All right, we are committed, we're involved, we are always available, ready to just tackle the world. Give me everything, give me all the tasks. I'm ready to take it on. I'm ready to make a difference, willing to go the extra mile because we are just gung ho about this new opportunity that we have. Okay, we're zealots. Here we are. Okay, and the one thing I want to point out about being in the zealot phase, even though this is a cycle, the goal is to not get is to not get to the zealot phase, and it is not to stay in the zealot stage. Okay, the thing is, as a zealot, your list of to-dos goes from 1 to maybe 30 because you feel that as a new employee, you can just tackle and take on everything. Yep, I can do that. Give it to me. Yep, I can do that. Give it to me. But as time goes on, you'll realize that your to-do list becomes never ending, which then moves us to the second phase, the irritable phase. Understanding that, here expectations are setting in place. You had unclear, just unrealistic expectations for yourself going into that new position because now you're irritable. You see, okay, I can't take on all of these tasks. It's not realistic for me to just do one thing, to do the next, to do the next. Okay, so now you're angry. Your sense of creativity is now diminished. You become frustrated with whether it's your patients, your coworkers, or family, because now you see what reality is. Okay, so now you have a sense of sadness. You're feeling helpless. You're feeling hopeless. You're giving less attention to your students or your family members, coworkers, and you might be a little more snippy. Where in the zealot you are, yeah, let's do that. And here in the irritability stage, it's no, nope, that's not my responsibility. I don't want to do it. Nope, you can do it. Okay. So that language also changes as you move through the cycle. All right. So as you become irritable, you then become withdrawn. All right. So we move through the cycle to that withdrawal stage. And here, your energy is drained. You're almost avoiding your patients, your coworkers. When it's possible, you may be finding others to fill in, do other tasks that you were just so ready to take on as a zealot. But here you see just some absenteeism or even presenteeism. Where you may be present, but mentally your mind has completely checked out. You're overwhelmed by the complexity of the job because you were just so ready to take on 50 tasks. And now I don't want to do any of it. I don't want to have anything to do with any of my job. Okay. Where you now may show up 50%, 60%. And if nobody is calling out your 50 or 60% that you're performing at, you may stay at that 50 or 60% because that's just where you are functioning at this time. Okay, you may feel physical illness. You may have difficulties empathizing with others who may experience pain. Okay, and that also ties in what Emily talked about with the compassionate action steps. Somebody's coming to you with a situation that they just don't know what to do. You in this withdrawal stage, you may not be able to be present for that person because you yourself are operating on 50%. So I don't want to do it. I'm not available to you. I'm checked out. Okay, so when you've withdrawn yourself, you're just getting by. Okay, you're just functioning on half a tank. And as you get from withdrawal, you then move to that zombie stage. And here, I mean, if you just think about, working with patients, or if you're in a school setting, you're just trying to just get to the end, the finish line. I don't care what it looks like. I have my blinders up, and nothing or anybody's going to stop me because I'm just one track mind. But also in this zombie stage, you have this sense of only you can get things done. Okay, so if you have a client or a patient or a student who is just struggling, and you might have that sense of persecution, or inflated sense of importance, where you feel like, I'm the only person who can do this. I'm the only person who can solve these problems. Nobody else can. Okay, but you also have sleeplessness. You have a sense of persecution. All right, you feel that I'm the only one. But here in this stage, you also, with your blinders up, you also block out the supports that are there. You forget that you have supportive staff, family, friends, other people who can help step in, who can help support you and get you through. But when you're in the zombie stage, you're one track mind. Okay, you're the only one who just thinks, I'm the end. I'm the end all be all to get this person or get myself through. No one else. Okay. And so that then just brings us to that unwell versus renewal stage of the cycle. And it's up to you to stay in that place of illness, fatigue, state of overwhelm, or you're getting to that resiliency, that hardiness, transformation, understanding that situations, circumstances will come up. But if you have support in place, if you have mindfulness and self-care practices in place, you can stay in that compassion resilience stage, knowing that I may hit one of these stages throughout the day. Okay, now I want to add that this cycle does not have to be fluid. Okay, you can wake up a zealot, go to sleep in the withdrawal stage. You can wake up a zombie because you're just thinking so much about this person. Similar to that scenario we read, talking about compassionate action steps. That person, they just had that client on their mind. So they wake up as a zombie, but they can go to sleep in that compassion resilience because they figured out, I need my support. I need others to help me get through, to help just figure out what next steps may be. Okay, so it is normal. It is normal to just to go through this cycle. All right, but the biggest thing is just to understand how to get ourselves out of the cycle. All right, preventing and intervening before we get ourselves stuck in one of those phases. Okay, you can bounce around the cycle throughout a day. You can hit all 5 steps in that cycle in one day. But it's just really getting back to that compassion resilience, knowing that whatever situations, how chaotic my day may be, at the end of the day, I'm going to be compassionately resilient for myself, for my colleagues, for those that I may work with. And it's just understanding that it's normal. Compassion fatigue is a normal response. Okay? In the lines of work that you all do, and I know we have many people all over the world from just different positions and roles and entities, but it's normal. But how do you get yourself out of the cycle? And again, I want to go back to, you do not want to be in the zealot. That is not where you want to be. Okay? You want to be in that mindset, in that place of compassion resilience. All right? So just understanding the cycle happens and you'll move throughout it however your day is going. But keeping compassion resilience at the forefront, keeping those self wellness practices in the forefront for yourself, taking care of you, will keep you compassionately resilient. All right, so we are going to now look at Menti Link. I think I just saw it. Oh, okay. We're going to take a Menti poll. All right. In the last 6 months, which stage have you spent the most time in? In the last 6 months, which stage have you spent the most time in? And there is no shame here, because if I were to take this poll, I would struggle between zealot and irritable, because I actually just started. I started my job maybe 7 months ago. I was ready to take on everything. And then I realized that's not realistic. So I became a little irritable at home, just trying to figure out how to balance work and my home life. So things change. Things definitely change. All right, I'm seeing in okay, there we are. I'm seeing in the chat that some people are having some difficulties with the vote button. But I am seeing some results here. A lot in the irritability. Yeah. Yeah, and I'm sure a lot of that just came from those unrealistic expectations that you may have set for yourself from the jump. And then realizing, okay, we're living in reality. This is reality. So I'm a little irritable because I couldn't take on everything that I thought I could. And that is okay. That's normal. Right? I see 38% in zealot, 41% in withdrawal, 21 in zombie, 23% in burnout, 17% in compassion resilience. And I'm going to say, I think that number may be low because now that you have a visual, you can actually identify where you may fall in, and you can figure out and put strategies and practices into place to keep you out of those stages. It's normal to fall into a stage, but getting yourself out, okay, preventing yourself from staying stuck in a stage will actually build that compassion resilience for you. Thank you all for those who were able to do the poll. You know, this helps you all to see where you are and what changes or things you may want to put in place for yourself to just boost up that compassion resilience.
And Brittany, I just want to emphasize that normalcy component there, right? So we're seeing from the results, roughly 200 folks are able to participate when we the poll up, and only a small fraction of us finding ourselves in that place, that Zen cat space of compassion resilience. So totally normal to find our place, no shame or blame. It's much more about using it as a self-awareness tool so we can figure out what would be helpful to get us out of it. And that's exactly what I want to transition us into thinking about. And there's a activity that we often use, and it's called a systems drivers exercise. And you can do this on an individual level, or you can do it with a team or across an organization. But ultimately, the goal of it is to take a moment and think about what within, let's say we stick with the workspace. And if you're here just on a personal level, then switch this to your personal perspective. Let's say in a work environment, we were going to focus first on what are the things that drive your fatigue over the course of your work experience. And it could be things on an individual level, could be policies that you have at the system level, or it could even be federal, state level policies, procedures, expectations that are placed upon you that drive your fatigue. And we're not going to take time for you to populate a full list of this, but I just want you to put yourself there. Start to think about what are some things that put me into that cycle that Brittany was just describing from my work perspective. And now I want you to think on the flip side. What kind of things pull you out? What drives your resilience over the course of your workday? What things leave you feeling filled up, fulfilled, excited? And just think of what that list would include. The next part of this is to think back to our two lists. So we got our drivers of fatigue in our head, our drivers of resilience, and thinking about our locus of control. And as we kind of peruse through the items, we can say to ourselves, you know what? In the near future, let's say in the next month, which of these items do I feel I have control around? And which of them do I not have control around? We can then kind of take a read of how much of our day, like what percentage of our day, or our team's day, or our organization's day, do we spend focusing on things that are ultimately outside our control? And I can tell you in my personal life, when I've done this for myself, and certainly when I've worked with other teams, the percentages have varied everywhere from 10% to 80% of the day spent focusing on talking about things that are ultimately, at the end of the day, outside of our control. And while having some percentage of our day is helpful because it can generate a sense of validation, it can help us feel connected to others. It can also help us explore what in this thing do we have some level of control around. Oftentimes, that healthy percentage for folks, typically in the work I've been doing, falls around 10 or 15%. After we exceed that 10 or 15%, or whatever the healthy percentage is for us, we're no longer serving to validate ourselves, feel connected, or find what about this thing is within our control. We're actually just further depleting ourselves, further draining ourselves. So it's a trick here to figure out where is that balance. And once I've reached that healthy percentage, how can I remind myself and my teammates that at this point, we're just adding on to our level of fatigue. We're not helping ourselves by continuing to vent about and focus on this thing that at the end of the day is ultimately outside our control. When we do this with teams, you can see here on the slide is just kind of an example of what this can look like. And again, I've personally done this individually for myself in my personal life. I've also done it for my team and also for lots of teams and organizations out there. And the coding we used here is crossing out was no control. Italic was like maybe we felt like there was a little bit of control there. And bold was control. This is something we felt the team that did this one felt they had control around. There was another level to this too, as we think about our lists, particularly if we're doing it in a team environment and an organization. We can also identify which things on our list do we look to our leaders to have some level of control around. Now, granted, system change takes some time. So we would want to say more like we look to our leaders to have control around this item in the next 1 to 2 years. And that's where you'll see the L's on this list. This team said, these are the things I look to my leadership to have some level of control around in the next 1 to 2 years. If you'd like to explore using this activity, and there's a further write-up in section number 4 to walk you through it, we ask that if you include the leadership component, perhaps you're even thinking about it for yourself. Maybe you're a leader on your team, within your organization. You're thinking, goodness, what would the L's be for my team? We then say that we ask leaders, as you gauge of this, to respond in one of 3 ways to the L's. These are things, either option 1, these are things in the next 1 to 2 years, yes, the leadership team can do something about. we're going to partner with you staff to think about how to solve or get over this hurdle and make this change. Or second option, this is something that we need more information about. We're not sure what to do about what you mean by it. We need some more information from you as staff. Or option number 3, just in the next 1 to 2 years, this is not going to be something we're going to be able to change. Perhaps there are a few things we can do to minimize the drain, the compassion fatigue, for example, it may cause, and this is some ideas that we'd like to do. But at the end of the day, in the next 1 to 2 years, the big picture thing, unfortunately, will still be there. It just helps staff to recognize, like, hey, okay, this isn't changing anytime soon. How can I budget the percentage of time I want to spend individually and with my team stressing about focusing on this thing that ultimately is outside our control, and our leadership is saying they're not going to be able to change in the next 1 to 2 years. I've also been with staff that have said, you know what, this thing is so important to me. I need it to change. And now that I know from leadership it's not going to in the next 1 to 2 years, well, perhaps they say, you know what, this may not be the right spot for me. And as harsh as that is, it's also one of the most compassionate things because it's minimizing the compassion fatigue that person may experience in that work environment. And when somebody's fatigued, it's not good for them as an individual. It's not good for the team. It's not good for the system. It's not good for the patients, the clients, the students that they're serving. So really, the more transparent conversation we can have about what things are changing and not changing, the more beneficial for everybody involved. So this is a strategy we encourage you to try. And I got to tell you, during COVID, I did a number of times. COVID, not something I control over, and I was putting a lot of time and energy towards. So just thinking about the percentage of time you're putting towards those things that are draining you and the things that are filling you up, just as important of a conversation. And oftentimes we find folks feel they have a lot of control over the things that drive their resilience. One thing that we often hear and resonates for each of us individually, Brittany, Monica, and I, is the role expectations have on that very list. If we went back through, we would see personal expectations or expectations others have of us play a huge part in driving either our fatigue or our resilience. So when our expectations are realistic, or better yet, even aspirational, they're pushing us out of our comfort zone a bit to be our best selves. They can help us achieve our best, our true potential, our goals. They can be very fulfilling. Lots of drivers of resilience. On the other end, when they're unrealistic or when they're unstated, I don't even know about them, they can drive a lot of fatigue and cause a lot of tension among individuals, whether it's in a personal or professional space. Expectations have a huge role in our well-being. And they often are coming out, if you're guilty like I am, of saying things like should. I should be doing this. I should be doing that. Or even worse, she should be doing this. Why isn't she, he, they should be doing that? Shoulds are taking us out of the present moment. They're putting us into the future. And they're putting a lot of blame and shame on whoever it is that we're placing the should on, including if it's ourselves. They're not helping us achieve our goals. They're not helping us be our best selves. Quite honestly, we need to do our best to reverse that, do our best to remove the should, and maybe it's a need to recalibrate the expectation to make sure it's realistic and stated and clear and realistic for the other person, if indeed we're communicating this expectation to someone else. After today, I'd love you just to take some more time, or after a time together, take some time with expectations. If you have the slide deck, you'll get to come back and look at some of these self-reflection prompts that you could sit with for a minute and just see what role does expectations have in your well-being, and what can you do to perhaps adjust an unrealistic expectation, because we all have them. So once you identify it, how can you adjust that into an affirmation? Instead of I should be doing this thing that isn't actually realistic, could you affirm yourself for the stuff that you're already doing and the strengths you already have, the progress you're already making, and the effort you're putting into it? Now, a lot of times in expectations, like I mentioned, there's a drain if the expectation is unrealistic and unstated, can also come when we get expectations from others. So not always our own expectations. Those have a huge role in it. But when we're in relationships with others, personal and professional, naturally, there's going to be lots of expectations back and forth between us. If you find that you're in a situation and the expectation placed upon you is not realistic or not clearly stated, there's a couple tips we have here for you to consider as you approach that individual with that expectation concern. And now we do have it broken into these two columns because on the left-hand side of the screen here, this is if you're somebody who you may have more positional power than the person that you have an expectation concern with. So this could be a supervisor approaching a supervisee. Honestly, it could also just be a peer, but you could be somebody who's involved in a committee when the other person isn't, or you've been here longer than the other person, so you've got a little more seniority. And there's a slightly different approach that you would take from when the roles are switched. So, for example, if I'm in a supervisor role and I'm approaching someone I'm supervising and I've got an expectation concern, first and foremost, I want to make sure I ask about their ideas. I want to hear their feedback, both positive and negative. As we engage in this conversation, I want to unearth any sort of questions that they may have, suggestions on moving forward with this expectation. As I do, I want to make sure my rationale, my true north, my why is communicated. That the why, what, and how around expectations are huge. If we can focus when we share an expectation on communicating all three of those, we break down a lot of miscommunication and we can get to the root of an expectation to see if indeed it's realistic with that person. So I want to make sure my rationale is clear for that person. I also want to honor that I'm human and that I'm open, that I'm going to make mistakes, that I'm going to be in need of advice. And just like we did in the compassion action steps, we're going to ask permission before we give someone advice on how to meet an expectation so they can get themselves in that space and decide if whether or not it's the right time for them to hear our advice. And then making sure we're over communicating our intentions and summarizing and repeating back anything that we've decided on. Now, if you're someone that's approaching someone with more positional power than yourself and you've got an expectation concern, number one, let's do our best to avoid triangulation, right? We don't want to go off with other coworkers and gossip and vent about all these struggles and not include the person that we're having challenges with. If we're in a situation where we feel we really do need the support of that person, like a support person, in order to go communicate with the other person about our expectation concern, we're just clear as we engage in that communication that that's our need. We need them to be there as a support for us. We're not just here to vent and gossip about the other individual. If that rationale hasn't been clearly stated in the expectation, we need to ask questions to help seek it out. Make sure we know what that true north is. As we share our views, we're using I statements. Before we give any reactions, just like before we give advice, we're going to ask permission. So again, that person's in the right headspace, can say whether or not now is the right time for it. And then any sort of ideas we have about modifying these expectations, we want to make sure, again, we go back to that true north, the why, and any sort of challenges that may be going on with meeting the expectation, like how this modification will help address that. So just a few things that we've found helpful in our interactions with others when working to clarify expectation concerns. Again, a huge driver of fatigue and resilience. Another big thing that can drive a sense of resilience and keep us out of a place of compassion fatigue is that of boundaries. So I'm going to turn it over to Monica to talk to us a little bit about that technique.
All right, y'all. You know what I'm seeing? I'm seeing some love when we're getting to these practical pieces about expectations, about boundaries. I just want to bring in Tiffany's voice, one of our attendees. She wrote in the chat, expectations are premeditated resentments. Let's sit with that for a minute. So you're loving these practical pieces, and in the toolkit, they're there for you, right? To bring to your teams, to bring forward these really meaningful conversations about what we expect of each other. And in this case, how to set boundaries, how to figure out what we want to say yes to, how to proactively decide how we communicate those boundaries to other people. And so I'm going to move through this a little bit quickly because I want to have a really strong finish with you all. But just know in the compassionate boundaries section of the toolkit, some practical pieces for us to figure out what is our yes and what is our no. Next slide, Emily. So they give you even language examples in the toolkit of ways that we can practice. Hey, listen, I'm working with a dysregulated kid. I do want to figure this out with you. Yes, I do. But we're going to have to problem solve later when there's not so much emotion in the room. So that's my no. So that's my yes and that's my no. Let's take a 5-minute break. We'll come back. I love this one here on saying no to extra commitments. So the district's goals, my agency goals are so important to me. I need to discuss what could come off my plate or what I can do in a different manner in order to take on anything new. I'm working to balance my family's needs and my workload. So when you bring these expectations and boundary examples to your workspaces, you'll find some really practical resources to create these crucial conversations we need to be well. So what I want to do right now is just quiet my voice for a minute and put Brene Brown in the house because Brene's in the house if you're going to be talking about this cool stuff. So let's listen for a minute to a short video from Brene so that she can kind of lay this out for us, and then I'll come right back to you.
I make a distinction between empathy and compassion. So empathy I say is a skill set. It can be taught, learned, observable,
I was just trying to think
measurable.
about that. What's the difference?
It's really, I think, a skill set, or it's a collection of skill sets. Compassion, I think, is more of a belief system that we have to commit to about how we're going to treat ourselves and other people. And so it was really funny, I had this like mound o data. I called it the compassion smackdown. Like I was like, these incredibly compassionate people, like so compassionate that they bugged me a little bit. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, they bugged me, they did. They didn't even have any fun, judgy stuff that, we all like in ourselves and other people, except for when it's aimed at us, of course. But so I was like, what do they have in common? I assumed that what compassionate people shared in common was faith or spirituality.
And
You know what they share in common?
what is it?
Boundaries.
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 What do you mean by boundaries?
That's what I asked. Compassionate people have very clear boundaries that they insist are respected. They respect other people's boundaries, but they also have their own boundaries, and they're very clear about what's okay and what's not okay, and they enforce that with the people in their lives.
So it's not just blanket compassion.
It is blanket compassion.
It is.
Predicated by boundaries.
Oh, come on, Brene. Come on, Brene, bring it. So what we say yes to, what we say no to. Let's share the slides. I just want to read that one last piece there. That's so powerful. On reflecting on boundaries. You're loving Brene. I see the thumbs. I see the heart. Now let's look at this. If you don't mind, I'm just going to read this to you. Compassionate people ask for what they need. They say no when they need to. And when they say yes, they mean it. They're compassionate because their boundaries keep them out of resentment. Back to Tiffany, one of our attendees' comments, right? So, with that, you're clapping, you're loving, I'm feeling it. And what I want you to do right now, my invitation is to you 5 minutes, just a 5-minute stretch break, move your frame, take yourself a few minutes to regroup. Come on back because we're going to finish strong. We'll see you in a few minutes.
Welcome back, everyone. I see this number is just going up. So I will give maybe 30 seconds to a minute to let you all get settled back in from your breaks. It was a quicker one, but hopefully you were able to do what you needed to do. sip of water myself. All right. Well, while everybody is coming back and getting themselves situated, we brought up if you think back 2 hours ago, maybe time flies when we're having fun, right? If you think about or look at the word cloud that you all populated, just what a compassionate culture looks like to you, that's what we're hitting on next. Culture, workplace culture, healthy culture, all of it. Okay, so we're taking everything that we talked about today, and whether it's the compassionate action steps, our compassion fatigue, what drives our fatigue and resilience, expectations, boundaries, individual wellness practices, and we're putting it all together into how we want to carry out our culture. All right, so on here, just to point out some words, you have supportive, empathy, understanding, listening, love, trust, unconditional, welcoming, respect. Okay, so this is what you all identified as what you want your workplace culture or culture in general to look like, feel like, sound like. All right, so let's give you a moment to reflect on this. This will also let you all just get back into your spaces, settle in. And even though this has already been populated, if you can think of any more words now that we've gone through the content of the toolkit, any more words or feelings or sounds that'll capture workplace culture, a compassionate workplace culture. Just reflect on that for a little bit. All right. So if you think about when we had our first breakout group, we had group agreements. Those are things that the group agrees upon when we're in a space together, workspace, what have you. But as you go out and you work with different departments, different community members, family members, all of it, you want to come up with healthy culture team agreements for the workspace, whatever setting you may be in. All right, so if you just look at this list, being welcoming to all through our words and body language. Okay, how are you presenting yourself? Do you come in happy, saying hi, or are you just quiet and your body language just shows that you're shut off? Seeking to understand others' perspectives. Okay, being open minded that your perspective may not be the only way of thinking. Okay, leaving those judgments and biases out, but being welcome to others' opinions and thoughts. Demonstrating approachability. Can people come to you? Can they talk to you? Are you open and welcoming? Or are you closed off and like you just got this big sign on your face that says, don't talk to me? Okay, how do you engage with others? Through your tone. Are you a listener or do you just listen to speak? All right, focus on the positives. Okay, pulling out those strengths and the goods that you see from coworkers or patients or family members. Okay, not leaving out the negatives or the weaknesses that can be talked about amongst the group, but we want to highlight the positive, the goods that people bring to the table. Engage in each other's wisdoms and strengths. So kind of put 4 and 5 together. All right, highlighting, pulling out what you see in each person. Okay, we all have a set of strengths and wisdom that we come with, so not being afraid to pull those out of each other. Offer to assist team members. Okay, again, are you just independent? You are just, I get it done myself, or do you work with your team members? Understanding that different perspectives can give you a different mindset, a different way of looking at situations and problem solving. Hold ourselves and each other accountable. This is huge. Do you point the finger and play the blame game? Or do you say, you know what? I could have done better in this situation. Can you help me with this? Or vice versa. Monitor and care for our well being. Okay, here we are again. Our well being, taking care of yourselves. What does that look like for you, for others? Okay, you can't possibly think that you can give yourself 100% to the world if you aren't taking care of yourselves. And then lastly, connecting through our common feelings. Okay, we each know what being angry feels like. We know what being happy, being anxious, being upset feels like. Bring that all to the table so that we can discuss that, figure out what that looks like. All right, but the biggest thing about culture agreements is that they're helpful in the workplace as they help with establishing and building building a positive and compassionate culture for everyone in that setting to carry out daily. However, culture agreements can be utilized outside of the workplace. All right. So they can be used. However, culture agreements can be utilized outside of the workplace. They can be used in your personal life with friends and family, in the community, in spaces with diverse cultures and identities. They can be used anywhere. Okay. When you understand the why of anything that you do in your life, but specifically with culture agreements, your what and how becomes more meaningful to you, and fulfilling the purpose of having the agreements also becomes easier to execute as you recognize the sole intention behind them. So, the use of culture agreements is to evolve the expectations and boundaries, as we discussed before, that you have for yourselves on that individual level, but then you transform them and come together as a community or as a whole to have inclusive, compassionate, and agreed upon language when carrying out a mission or a goal, whether in the community itself, within a family dynamic, or even going back to your workplace setting. So, if you bring back to mind that word cloud of what a compassionate culture looks like, how you want your culture to look, feel, sound will be clearly specified and stated in the culture agreements you and your team or family or community members come up with. So, we're going to play a video. It's called Knowing Your Why by Michael Jr., and it explains beautifully just if we understand our why, everything else makes sense. You can come up with those culture agreements easily with your team, and it's easy to execute them as well.
How do I know? A lot of people, when they think of the phrase, how do I know, they always want to put the what behind it. How do I know what I'm supposed to do? The question that you really should ask is, how do I know why I'm here? Because when you know your why, your what becomes more clear and more impactful. If you know, like for instance, people know that I do comedy, but that's what I do. My why is to inspire people to walk in purpose. So I can do comedy, I can write books, I can be in a movie, because all of it is motivated by my why. In fact, I have a new web series out called Michael Jr. Break Time. We probably just did the 6th episode. It's on YouTube. So every single Wednesday at 3 o'clock, we drop a new episode on YouTube of Michael Jr. Break Time. What it is it's me. I travel around the country and I do stand-up comedy, in case you didn't know. And in the middle of my comedy set sometime, I'll stop and just talk to my audience. And we've been filming this, and it's pretty cool. So we're in Winston-Salem. I'm gonna show you a clip from Winston-Salem. And I'm just talking to this guy in the audience, and he tells me that he's a musical instructor at a school. So I was like, all right, you're a musical instructor, can you sing? Let me hear you sing a song. So this is what happened at the last episode of Michael Jr.'s Break Time. Check it. So you're a musical director? Cool.
Yes, sir.
All right, so let me get a couple bars of like Amazing Grace. Can you do the first part of that? Go ahead.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me.
Wow. That bro could sing, you know what I'm saying? All right, all right. Now, what you give me the version is if your uncle just got out of jail, you got shot in the back when you was a kid. I'm just saying, let me see the hood version real quick if you know which version I'm talking about. Just see if that exists. Let me see what you got.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I see.
Okay. Here's what I want you to catch. The first time I asked him to sing, he knew what he was doing. The second time, he knew why he was doing it. When you know your why, your what becomes more impactful because you're walking towards or in your purpose.
So identify that why. You walk in your purpose. All right. Monica, it's all you.
All right, I'm ready for you all. So, just for this slide here, this is an example of how you might convene your team, show that video, and then you ask these questions. What led you to the field? What values connect you to the work you do? What is one way you find joy in your rest or a rest in your workday? So, all of these resources that we've had you either experience or touch or examine or look at are there for you. They're there for you to grab as a result of this experience you gave us today, just your precious time and attention. So, and we trust you to grab this resource and run with it and make it your own in your agency, school, organization. But you can see the purpose of reconnecting to your core sense of the profession that's so important and so invigorating to be able to show up as your full self. So now I want to talk to you just a little bit about some implementation stuff. So here are some next steps before we close this up. So with this is an example just within a school, but so people can use this toolkit in multiple ways. As you said, we're not offering you anything prescriptive. We're empowering you as practitioners and leaders to grab piece of this and use it. We think the 12 sections in a row makes some sense, in terms of starting with compassion and then moving into fatigue and then expectations and boundaries and well-being. But you can use this to distribute it to your staff. You can use it agency or school wide at the start of the school year. You can use the visuals or the short mindfulness experiences to get meetings started that are much more meaningful. You can facilitate group sessions monthly. Start with the willing. This does not have to be everybody. Just say to 8 people on your team in clinical supervision or at a leadership team, can we do some of this work together? Can we carve out 20 minutes once a month to really reflect on our well-being and embed this in what we do? So those are examples of ways that you could get started in this work and decide, who's my crew, who wants to look at this stuff together. You're going to find the toolkit is fairly easy to use. And now I'm just going to bop real quick to the Q&A, which has been running throughout this experience. And I want to honor some questions that people had. I'll get back to resources there in a second, but we had some questions about youth who serve disabilities and really running into some stigma, some limitations. I'm encouraging you all to tackle those things at the Systems of Care conference that you're leaning into the next 2 days? Like what does it mean when providers who serve people with disabilities actually get in our own way sometimes? The medical model, which is so focused on labels and disabilities, we get that, right? Those are part of what we were lifting up today was that video on labels, how powerful they are and how much they change the perspective of how we view people. I'm seeing some thoughts, some great thoughts in the chat. I had a question about, are these resources available to share widely? Oh, yeah. That's why we're here, right? You can jump on, you might get a little screen that says sign up. It doesn't obligate you to a thing. It just helps us keep track of who's using it. And guess what? They're using it all over the world. We get requests from Australia, New Zealand, Germany, Poland. I mean, you name it. We have people who have grabbed a hold of this and feel empowered to support each other at work. Any other things I want to tackle? Oh, Natalie, you're talking about living big, BIG, putting boundaries in place from a place of integrity and generosity. I think that's a Bernaism. Way to go, Natalie. So lots of great observations for you. We're in no way surprised by that because we knew we were jumping into this pool of mutual learning that you are just getting started with today. So we come to you generously to offer this possibility. We hope that you saw yourself in this today, maybe saw a little bit of fatigue, saw some things around expectations or boundaries, felt some things when you watched some videos. These are all available for you to give this a try with your staff now. This is the gift that has been granted for all of you to utilize. There is a folder with the resources, just to remind you, many of you have asked, hey, can I have this PowerPoint? Can I have the things? Oh, yeah. Go to your resources tab, grab that folder, make it yours. That's exactly why we're here, is to make your work stronger. And so just a few words, and then I can, Ashley, if you want to close for us, but I just want to say a few things about the conference itself. Here in Wisconsin, we're also doing system of care work. And I actually was just at the conference here in Wisconsin in the last week or two and left incredibly inspired, as I suspect you will. And this system of care summit that you're engaging here's what they're inviting you to. It's an opportunity for Children's Mental Health Partner to reunite, renew, and re-energize how to support kids and families, and that it's for you to renew, reunite, and re-energize. I love that. A focus on children's mental health is about changing hearts and minds, folks. It's about embedding curiosity and connection into the culture of our schools, agencies, and communities. And in our overtext and busy schedules, do we reach out to each other and say, how can I make your work better? I'm noticing, are you doing okay? Let's talk. Let's make meaning of this work. You feeling a little tired? Shoot, that's normal. Let's just name it so we can bring it up and take a look at it together. When you ask the kids what they want and need, they say with great clarity, believe me, hear me, and understand me. We do hear you. We believe you. We are here. And so we want to lean into and have you enjoy this conference that you are going to lean into the next 2 days, and just really enjoy the importance of creating a system of care that will work for everybody. Because in fact, we are better together is what we wanted, what is being held out for us. And so as a group, we can bring out each other's strengths. We have given you a pathway today for you to look at compassion resilience at work, which is really about empowering each other to be our best selves. So I wanted to just offer that as part of the closing, just reconnect you to your sense of purpose for why you gave us this precious time and attention, that we really are in this work together, and a desire to create a seamless system of care for the kids and families that we serve. So look at that. Things are moving. So that's what we wanted to offer you today. Thank you so much for your precious time and attention. We're a little bit early. Ashley, anybody in your crew want to jump on and say hey? Or Emily and Brittany, I just want to do some reflection and say thank you so much for showing up today, for your comments, for your wisdom. It means a lot.
Just want to emphasize the gratitude for you all being here, and more importantly, for all the work you do back home. I mean, goodness gracious, this world is a better place because of you. Thank you so much for engaging with us. We'll pop just a few more resources into chat, but all of those will also be available in a document in the resource folder in a little bit. Just give me a little bit more time to grab all of them together and pop them into one document for future reference.
Brittany, anything?
Thank you all. Sorry. Thank you all for your time today. This was really fun. I'm just loving the emojis or emoticons, the laughing and hearts. Just being here, engaging with you all today. It's a great way to kick off the conference for you all. So thank you for allowing us to start a great conference off for you all. And I'm just hopeful that it keeps going for you.
Awesome. And thank you to our three phenomenal speakers today and trainers. We really appreciate you. For the folks who are still with us in the audience, we still have more to offer on the platform. It doesn't end here. First, I want to let you all know that you can rewatch this training almost immediately. It takes about a minute or two for it to generate on the platform. But if you navigate back to view schedule, and I have a screenshot here on the screen, but if you click on view schedule and navigate back to the session, right now it says join now, but after the session ends, it will say watch replay, and you can rewatch this training, and the training will be available even after the summit. So if next month or the month after that, you want to come back and watch the training, you can log back into AirMeet and navigate to the session and rewatch it as often as you like and have access to the resources. So all of that will continue to be available to you. I hope that you all had a great time. If you had a great time, please show me some emotions in the chat, some hearts, some wows. I hope that you are feeling full. Spread the word. Make sure you share this summit with other folks. This is a no cost registration summit. That's rare, right? And free CEUs. Over 75 speakers from across the nation will be joining us for the next 2 days. Lots of networking and collaboration opportunities. And like I said, access to recordings for all of the sessions and all of the resources, even after the summit ends months and months from now. So we hope that you will continue to spread the work. I have some of my colleagues dropping some links in the chat so you can promote this summit across your social networks. Sharing is caring, right? A couple of platform features that most of you all have already experienced or seen, but did you know that you could also schedule one-on-one meetings with other attendees? You can do that by navigating to people and clicking on that person's picture, and you can send a direct message to that person or schedule a meeting. So if someone left a question in the chat that really spoke to you or a comment that you really liked, schedule a meeting with them and maybe talk to them a little bit more about what's going on in their world. For my East Coast neighbors, I'm here in Atlanta, Georgia. So for my East Coast folks, this summit, it starts a little bit later for us in the day. So take an afternoon or take advantage of the afternoon start time and maybe join a little earlier tomorrow and check out some lightning talks or visit partner booths. There are lots of ways to engage in the summit even before the first keynote starts. I want to also mention, and I'm sure you all already noticed this, that you can earn engagement points and win prizes. So we have different prizes available, like a $50 Amazon gift card. There's also some tea time with me, virtual tea time. So I love tea. If you want to join me for a virtual chat, there's that in the prize box and lots of other things that you could potentially win. So the more you engage with the platform, the more you engage with other people, the more points that you can earn. The wellness room will be open tomorrow for the entirety of the summit. So if at any point you need to debrief or decompress and take a break, you can travel over to the wellness room, and there will be folks from our team that will welcome you there into the space. Last but not least, another way to collaborate on and engage with folks here in AirMeet is to connect in the collaboration station. So in a second, this session is going to close. And then I'm going to open what's called the collaboration station, or what we're calling the collaboration station. And what happens there is that you can navigate using your keyboard to the different different circles that will be on the screen. So I don't know if you can see my screen right now. Hopefully you can. There are circles here with different types of roles. Well, you can go into that space and maybe you want to meet with some other peer support providers that are here right now. You can use your keyboard to navigate to that space and join a conversation with other peer support providers. So I hope that you'll stay with us and join us over in the collaboration station where we can talk about what we learned and just get to know each other a little bit better. I'll be there, so you'll see me there in just a few minutes. All righty, if you have to leave and you can't join in on the fun at the collaboration station, then please, before you head out, I'm asking about 25 people. There's like 400 of us. If I can get 25 people to go to the feed and answer the question that Monica posed to us earlier. What led you to your field of work? And let's reflect also on the quote that we heard from Michael Jr. When you know your why, your what becomes more impactful because you're walking toward your purpose. So let's reflect on that. Let's put our response to this question in the event feed. We're going to call that the read the feed, so we can all read and learn more about each other. So again, after this, 2 options: read the feed, respond to that, and then join us over in the collaboration station where we can all get to know each other a little bit better. Okay, well, again, thank you to our speakers. Thank you to you all. Y'all have been so active in the chat and so active in the Q&A. So thank you for also joining us and being a part of this training today. And I'll see you over in the collaboration station soon. Bye.